Hey there, so today we are going to look at a portion of the internet that is perhaps best left unserved, but yet I want to go and I want to make a record of this. Why? Because I want to show the classic misdirection that is going to be out there and how you and I, comic book consumers, are basically being maligned by people who don't even buy comic books. That's the way this plays too. At the end of the day, the comic book industry is allowing this. They will even sometimes put out statements that are addressing it. Someplace like Vault Comics, for example, they might put out a statement saying they're not down with the misogyny, they're not down with the ists and phobes. That's what happened around the milkshake controversy, and I'm sure some other people will do that pretty soon as well. And well, when all of that stuff comes up, the industry, it's not held by it. You know why? Because when an industry says that I can't have a good product and I can't have professionalism, that was the argument from Go, and well, we're at where we are now, then screw it. They can't have my money. I think that's the perfect trade-off. If they want to go out there and they want to misdirect and they want to let this kind of crap speak for them, that's fine. Then they can expect money from these people. And you know what? That will never, ever come. They're basically taking away money that would be there. And these people, they may tell them on Twitter that they're going to buy their products. I mean, that's what we heard about Michelle Perez, wasn't it? People were going to emphatically support Image comic books because Michelle Perez was right there. Look at all those pre-orders. And you know what you saw? 1,030 orders, all that were there, and that includes all of the press and everything else out there. That's all they could manage with the one book, and that was because they had somebody to say those are the bad guys. After all of that boils down, all of that simmers, and these people leave because they may buy one or two products within it too, then where are you again? Because you know the people that were spending monthly, weekly, and on, they're not going to come back. I'm not coming back for myself. I was spending money, and when I talked about that, when I say talked about the family or friends, I would talk about how I supported the arts. I had grown from a comic consumer to understanding exactly how comics were manifest. You know, when they're made manifest, there's a lot of detail within that. You have to add so much skill, understand how to lead the eye and on. Well, that was me supporting the arts, much like someone would support, you know, a museum or what have you. Now, I don't feel that that supports me. I've never been attacked as a patron of, say, the opera. I would never see that, and maybe I'll switch off. Maybe I'll go somewhere else with that. I will still continue to support artists that I know are really down with us, but besides that, I am not going to support any of this mess ever again. The Marvels, they already lost me. I've talked about that many times, but look at all the bad people out there. I mean, for example, today, I was looking in my Amazon cart, and I noticed Sheltered. It was there. I had all 4 volumes, and I was thinking, yeah, you know, I have credit. I'm going to knock that out. And then I noticed the name Ed Bryson on it, and I thought, wait a minute, Ed Bryson had a lot to say. So I deleted those because I'm not supporting that. When I went through I just knocked out my entire pull list because I said, no, I'm not supporting that. It's not going to sit there, and this is not going to happen. Now with that, I'm going to have certain comic books that I will reserve, but I'm not going to have enough to even call it a pull list anymore. I don't even qualify for that anymore. After decades of dropping money, that is what's there. And when people say, well, what about the good creators? Well, those creators, when they've decided to be silent, you don't know about so many of them. I mean, when you have people like a Zurcher, who I was told over and over is a good guy out there, well, we've seen how he's gone for the last few days. Now I'm blocked by him. Now I have books within my house that have the name of somebody that is basically, you know, gone out and insulted myself, insulted other people. I would never, ever allow that from any other industry, and I won't allow this from this one anymore. People need to wake up. They need to see that, and they need to see the misrepresentation. So I think that's why covering this stuff is important. I know that when I'm leading into this too, I know that I talk for a few minutes, but I want you to understand the mindset of this. And really, I want you to understand something too. You're seeing the resolve of myself and other people. You're seeing this happen live. You're not seeing this happen, after the fact. You're seeing people that are going from full support with an industry to making concessions and making excuses to saying, screw these people. They are not going to do this. And if one person like myself is saying that, how many people are just walking away? That's what this industry needs to go with. It needs to go with a gut check. But instead of that, we have people like an Eric Larson, for say, that goes out and he blatantly ignores that. He blatantly ignores the fact that even when he's presented with it, hey, I'm doing this, check my Twitter. You can see all of the things that I've bought. I'm no longer buying it. He doesn't care. He doesn't care because it isn't his. I wasn't his consumer there. I was just the consumer of all the people his company actually represents. Well, that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that he took away sales from them, because at the end of the day, why should he care? But like I said, misrepresentation. Looking at this, the Daily Dot, indie comic Jawbreakers canceled due to Comicsgate leak. Well, right away, you can already tell this is going to be misrepresentation. Also, if you want to see someone cover this pretty well, go to the place Bounding Into Comics. They're actually a pretty friendly place there. They actually cover things correctly. They put out the word for this, so I want to give them props with this. You can see the pictures here. I mean, look at that. I mean, look at the art style and everything. Look at all of that is so beautifully done. You actually have so many talented people on this, and it has to be maligned this way. Crowdfunded indie comic Jawbreakers just lost its publishing deal, canceled due to its creator's history of online harassment. There we go. We got to have those pointed words, don't we? It's the latest chapter in the burgeoning Comicsgate saga, following in the footsteps of Gamergate. You know what? It's not following in the footsteps of anything. This is its own thing when you get down to it. And the thing here is that this industry cannot actually stand to war with its consumers. You're seeing the same playbook made manifest. You're seeing the same types of plays. But at the end of the day, if you want to see comic books die a little bit more, this is the way to go, because they cannot maintain this way. We're not talking about billions of units. We're talking about 20,000 out there. Do you think that driving away a few thousand of your consumers, do you think on a thing that's selling 20,000 units, do you think you can survive that? Because that is not only money taken away from, say, a big publishing house like Marvel, but when you get down to, say, an Image Comics, that's literally taking money out of the person's pocket that produces that. And they don't make that much money to begin with. Continuing, while Jawbreakers was a team effort like most comics, artist John Malin and Brett R. Smith attracted less attention than writer Richard C. Meyer. So they're trying to tell us that the much maligned John Malin, because he likes to talk about inclusion, and the fact that Brett R. Smith here, he's a conservative and he's actually a talent within the industry as well, just like John Malin is a talent within that. They actually don't attract any kind of attention. But of course, they're looking at a specific type of attention. They're not looking at the attention that comes with being a professional. They want to look at the attention from a provocateur. That's what they want to see there. Comic criticism that isn't acceptable in this day and age. Brought to you by the Daily Dot. Continuing, he's better known as an online shit stirrer, using the pseudonym Diversity in Comics to rail against, you guessed it, diversity in the comics industry. Yep, again, classic misdirection, because really, if we talked about professionalism and we put people on blast there, that wouldn't stand. The funny thing, too, when we talk about people going out and attacking their consumer base, these people were really down with firing back at Universal FanCon's creator because they went out and they railed against the community there. But with this, can't have that. It's different. Why? Because different buzzwords. That's the way we have to play, though, isn't it? And here, they're actually going to go further, which I find kind of interesting. But continuing, unlike Gamergate, which frames itself as a campaign for ethics in the games journalism, while predominantly attacking female game developers and critics, Comicsgate is more straightforward. It's a community of people who believe that comics, that is, mainstream action superhero comics like Marvel and DC have become too progressive. That's not what it is at all. These people, they want to go out and they want to mislead on that. There are many different things within this. We're going to talk about Asher, as I'm going to see next. I can't even believe that people would go out and treat him credibly, considering he was basically brought in through collusion. Like I've said, I'm getting bigger within this. And as I say this, I want to rail this really loudly. People need to look at his background and how he got into this. Nick Monroe, he puts together a very good piece on that, and I've also done videos on it, but we need somebody to really talk about that is bigger. We need them to talk about the collusion within the comic book media and how pervasive it is, and how these people, they have gone out and literally tried to destroy people's careers. Like say an Ethan Van Sciver, they literally tried to make him a Nazi. They literally tried to link him to Charlottesville. They utilized what they have there, what type of pull. They were actually turned down by certain places too, like the Atlantic. I mean, can you imagine the Atlantic turning you down for that? They're as progressive as they come, but he had to go shop it to the Daily Beast because the Atlantic, for whatever reason, didn't actually want the liability that came with that. But the Daily Beast, they seem to be intent on having it. But continuing, as Asher Elbin explained in the Daily Beast's extensive Comicsgate profile last month, this overlaps with a recent uptick in harassment against women, people of color, and perceived SJWs in the industry. Of course, it's harassment against the whatever. You make a bad comic book. You make something terrible that is failing. People try to talk about that, and you know what? You're not talking about comic books. You're not talking about equality here, wherein you can talk about creators. Nope, you're talking about whatever identity that you want to place on that. You're talking about either attacking a female instead of talking about a comic book that was created by a female, and it's the same thing on and on and on. On the reversal of that, too, when you look at people like Gabby Rivera, they go out and literally demonize white people, and no one seems to care because you know what? In current year, that's okay. It's okay to go out and attack the cis white male out there, even if the people aren't cis white males, when you get down to it. Basically, they have created this idea, this narrative here, where tens of thousands of people, and it's getting much bigger. We're going to pop in, we're probably talking over 100,000 people now within this thing that are saying, hey, this is not acceptable in any way, shape, or form. Hey, I used to buy comic books, but now I don't. Hey, I have a problem with this industry. Well, all of those people, you boil them down to this one word, Comicsgate, so you can essentially decry and avoid talking about the issue. Because this kind of stuff, it's an attempt to draw up bulletproofing. You apply these labels thinking that marginalized, which all of this falls under, says beyond reproach, and it doesn't. Anyone can be criticized for what they throw out there. Anyone can be criticized for not being a professional. Anyone can definitely be criticized when they throw anything out into the ether. I mean, I get blowback just for talking on the internet here. I get blowback with that. I'm not going to come at you and say that, I'm the protector of the marginalized, which is someone like a Mark Wade. That's what he tries to come with. You can even have people like that bringing him up, or bringing up a Dan Slott or a Chip Zdarsky. Those people are the protectors of the marginalized. Therefore, when you bring them into the equation, they're beyond reproach too. Very amazing. It's funny too, because these same people will try to devour those same people when you get down to it every now and then. But I guess to stay alive within this industry, I guess you have to go along to get along. But continuing here. So you have that nice picture layout, taking up a lot of room to make this to look that way as well. Remember when Marvel editor Heather Antos inspired vitriolic backlash for tweeting a photo drinking milkshakes with some female co-workers? That was Comicsgate. One of Meyer's more attention-grabbing controversies was a 2017 video called The Dark Roast. Yep, two things within that. Number one, we've talked about Heather Antos. So even the freaking earliest stuff by the Mary Sue says that Heather Antos there received 4 comments directed at her. Out of 94 positives, 4 negatives within that. And they said, well, she said there might be some death threats there. No proof of it, of course. Had them mailed to her, of course, but nope. And then they continue on with this narrative, despite the fact that they pretty much blockbot anyone that follows the wrong person or goes out there and actually says anything. But of course, the monsters out there, they're still arising. Then they bring up this video. It's the one video they love to turn to. It's the one video that Meyer decided he would go out there, and of course he called it the dark roast. He wanted to go out there and he wanted to throw out some kind of juvenile jabs at people. Now, were they crass? Sure. Was he a critic within that? Sure. Was he an industry professional? Were we talking about industry professionals here? No, he was not an industry professional. Now he's trying to sell something there, and now, of course, this has to be the one thing they bring up. What's interesting is this is used as the deflection point for all of the terrible things they have brought to the conversation, and it is used to paint everyone else within it. They want to say that they have a problem with this one guy here. They want to boil it down to that one thing. Well, the problem is that he couldn't apologize for it. If he went back and said, I'm sorry for that. I was just actually having a joke. I was having a jolly and a little bit of a laugh, which that's what he was doing. And that's pretty much what he said, all but the sorry. But you know what? You can't apologize to these people because you sinned. He sinned before that too. They just now have a little bit more fodder to throw out there. They will always find fodder. They will always blame you. If they can't blame you for your own issues, they will blame you for someone else's. What's terrible about this stuff too, I've talked about this before in the last few things, but I literally have 36 screenshots of people tearing apart his life online. They thought nobody was watching. They literally discuss everything about his life. Every single thing, because they want to rip him apart. They want to take his life apart and try to destroy it. They're trying to find his occupation. They're trying to find other things so they can go out and so they can cost him a career or anything else. Why? Because the man talked about comic books, because he supports an industry and says buy or don't buy. Unfortunately for them, people like myself who said buy, they saw this. The literal people that are supposed to be attracted to comic books, the ones that should be wanting to buy, those people see exactly what they're bringing to the table, and they no longer say buy. So you have people out there that are actually probably doing more for the industry within that, say the Richard C. Meyer out there, but they're hardening the resolve of other people out there too that are saying, no, I don't want anything to do with that. It's amazing how that works out, isn't it? Continuing, it wasn't so much a comedy roast as a screed of bigoted insults aimed at writers, artists, and editors in the industry. He described one woman as a cum dumpster and suggested several high-profile creators were pedophiles, throwing in some vicious transphobia for good measure. Don't you find it interesting when someone throws out like a Dave Chappelle? If he throws out anything, these people, they come at him too. But that's okay. It's okay to roast a specific way. It's okay to go out there and come at Trump, for example. You saw all of the things that were thrown out there at a journalist correspondence. How many things they back, and they say thumbs up for that. But yeah, you put a little bit of juvenile antic to it. You spin it in a way that they don't like the crassness to it. They wouldn't like it no matter how you threw it out there because, you see what they say anyhow, how it's all transphobe and sexist anyhow. But when you break it down, they're always going to come at something, but they're going to promote a standard that, like Eric Larson, for example, he said Michelle Perez, all of that stuff, it's all words, it's no big deal. Obama got that, literally said that. Obama got this stuff, but on the other side, he's attacking this now. Very interesting, isn't it? When you look at the optic to that, how they make excuses for one, but the other, nope, no way, no how, nowhere. Continuing. This set the scene for Jawbreakers cancellation, which Myers characterizes as a result of cyberbullying from leftist haters. No, it's actually criminal, but, we can get down to that too, and I'm sure a lawsuit can speak loudly. The rise and fall of Jawbreakers. Jawbreakers is, in fact, pretty successful already. Pretty successful. Yeah, that's an understatement and a half. The comic raised over $250,000 on Indiegogo, the kind of money one usually sees from popular webcomics like Penny Arcade or Check Please that have pre-existing fans. Really? $250,000 from web comic books out there? Is that what you think is going on? If you want to go and you want to look at what actually makes money within trade paperbacks, this is gunning for the second place within trade paperbacks, within the entire industry. The only thing, is trying to overtake Green Lantern Earth 1, the hardback edition there. That should say something right there. But the things that they say, well, that's kind of like a web comic book. The way that they try to throw these things out there to diminish the success is astounding. But again, they also don't know comic books too. So there is either a misdirection, which is already there, but there's also an ignorance of the subject, I'm sure, too. But continuing, rather than having a fan base, Jawbreakers represents a political cause. Is that right? Is that what it is? Because, you can't be a fan of things. It is a political cause. And it is a political cause in some ways. But there's a lot of things that are political causes that fall flat on their face. Isn't it interesting that this political cause is actually to make comics great again? Isn't that really funny when you get down to it? What does that mean? Is that a political thing when you're talking about it? Well, bringing something where basically a ex-superhero group tries to go in and they try to do something there. It looks like a 90s rendition of a comic book. That is trying to bring politics to it. Isn't that insane too? That you're trying to keep politics out of the comic book is political in and of itself. That's a big middle finger when you talk about that from an industry that says that's going to be the standard. But continuing here, it's aimed at people who think traditional male heroes are a dying breed and that superhero comics are losing sales due to women and diversity. Yeah, that's what it is. It's boiled down to those things, isn't it? The real optic to that, the real reason that you lose money, there's a lot of different things. People get tired of events. They get tired of all the reboots. They get tired of variant covers. But they also get tired of the way that people represent them as consumers. When you look at garbage like this, they get tired of people that are supposed to be professional going out and trying to malign them over and over again. And they get tired of the quality of comic books. And when they try to talk about it, well, they get this time of tripe. They get tired of that too. But continuing, when Meyer kickstarted an earlier version of the comic in 2015, he scraped past a $3,500 goal and delivered the volume 2 years later. Now he can monetize Comicsgate with help from established creators with some similar political views. Jawbreakers' new artist, John Malin, recently raised eyebrows by comparing leftists to Hitler. That is such another misdirection within that. You need to go back and look at that. I even talk about that in my last live stream, so it should be the video right before this one. You can go and check that out. There is a portion where they talk about it. Also, you can look at the link here. He basically compares SJWs to that mindset. He's talking about mindsets here, where people are ideologues. They go out and they weaponize hatred, fear, racism, and whatnot. Well, isn't that what they've just done? Don't they do that time and again? Continuing here. At the time, he was drawing Cable for Marvel, but his tenure ended soon after that. Wink, wink. We know what happened there then. Isn't that what they're saying? Continuing. Comic artist Ethan Van Sciver is one of Meyer's most prominent supporters, although his trollish behavior led DC Comics to distance itself from him this year. So they're basically saying, well, look at that. Ethan Van Sciver within that, isn't he a monster? These people have gone out of their way to group certain people together and try to attack them. And what do they all have in common? politics. They all have a certain stance. So these people, they want to go out and they want to say, well, this stuff isn't about politics, or politics are okay, and yet they try to eject anyone that is different than them, anyone with wrong think. They try to throw them out of the industry. There was actually a census of Marvel taken not too long ago that looked at the political standard within it. And you know what? No one identified themselves as conservative. Now, within any other industry, people would look at that and say, there's probably political bias here, and that would trigger investigations, and it should trigger them. People should take a long, hard look at that. But in this, it's just quote-unquote artists now, because artist has gone from independent free thinking to this thing that we see out there that is either think just like me, be just like me, rail against the machine just like me, essentially being part of the machine within that, or don't be part of my industry. It's amazing. You even see mags out there, for example, talking about the community again, because this is now a community. It's not an industry. No, we're not talking about occupation. We're not talking about vocation here. We're talking about a group of friends all getting together and patting each other on the back. Well, you know what? I'm not part of that community. I never wanted to create with them. I am going to create a horror comic book with somebody that is a pro here. I'm going to create something because I want to throw it out there after I have seen Infidel take to the shelves. But on top of that, when I'm talking about this kind of stuff, that's not my industry. I was a comic consumer. I do say was because I backed away from quite a bit as these people decided. First, the blockbotting came. Then on my second day of Twitter, I got called a Nazi because I followed a bunch of people, but I followed the wrong person. All of the things that I do in my life don't really matter because I pushed that follow button or because I had a disagreement. You'll learn that really when it comes down to it, there will always be a problem unless you're willing to lick the boot heel. If you want to lick the boot heel of social justice, well, they'll definitely let you in the club. They'll let you in there, and you'll definitely have to apologize for who you are and how you were born, if you were born, say, with the wrong color skin, the wrong gender, or what have you. But at least you get to be part of the club, right? Continuing here. Colorist Brett Smith has a long resume with mainstream publishers, but recently tried to launch an indie comic about an alt-right icon, Base Stickman. So far, the Base Stickman comic has failed to materialize. Man, you like how they left out Clinton Cash. Don't you think that's pretty interesting? They didn't want to talk about Clinton Cash in there because then we would have to talk about a New York Times bestseller, wouldn't we? And well, let's ignore that. Continuing here. In terms of its actual content, Jawbreakers looks like a professionally produced but rather unoriginal action comic. It's about a team of superheroes turned mercenary, and the Indiegogo page doesn't go into much detail about the plot or characters. If it wasn't marketed as a battlefield in the culture war, it probably wouldn't have attracted so many financial backers. Doesn't that say something, though, about all of this? Doesn't it say what people think about comic books when it brings in this type of money? Are you trying to say that the people that are backing it, they're not consumers at all? Are you taking the Eric Larson approach and trying to say all of the people out there, well, they wouldn't back comic books? Maybe if comic books wanted to invite you in, maybe if comic books went in and tried to cater to people that are willing to spend money, and it didn't capitulate to these identitarian terrorists, as you would have it, if they didn't go out and basically malign anything different than them, maybe it would be different. Maybe people that would spend on this would spend on that too. But as it were, you're right. People that would back this, they won't back many comic books. I'm now one of those. Again, check my Twitter. Go back all the way to October, and you'll find, oh gosh, you'll find a lot of bit of money that has actually been spent on this industry that just stops. You can track real time the progression of this stuff. You can track the awareness of that. I mean, it takes a little while. It's like watching the death of a friend. But as you get to a certain point, these people harden your resolve to it. But continuing here, thanks to its popularity on Indiegogo, Jawbreakers landed a conventional publishing deal with Antarctic Press. It's an indie press with an open-minded attitude to new material. publishing a wide variety of genres. It also publishes both pro and anti-Trump satirical comics, suggesting it doesn't necessarily have a horse in the Comicsgate race. However, the decision to publish Jawbreakers quickly attracted attention. Last week, several retailers announced they wouldn't stock the comic, making a statement against what they believe to be a toxic influence in the industry. So basically, these places came out and said they were going to do something that they never do before. They basically got together, they conspired behind the scenes to push people, other people, not just them. They decided to push and bully. They got caught, and then they put out this. They've not done that for other comic books in the past, mind you, but they decided to do this for this one. They also like using the variant edition one because it comes with an installed victim narrative that's going to keep building. Right now, we have even more that is building up. In fact, if you want to go out and you want to check a little bit of that, it's pretty interesting the way that's coming together right now, because you can see the support variant edition and all the other retailers targeted by Richard Meyer, John Malin, and Comicsgate. So now, of course, it's gone even further than it was. Now we have a guy that is within all of this, literally going out and trying to say that John Malin is out here targeting places, that Comicsgate is out here targeting places, and so on. It's interesting how you can basically lose money for something. Oh yeah, you got your 143 likes. Hell, let's give you 1 million likes. The problem is that ain't going to support comic books at the end of the day. That's not going to help anything. But, of course, let's ignore that kind of stuff. Let's ignore all of that. So here is variant edition, and there's a hypocrisy within this statement too. They say that they won't stock it because it does not appeal to our demographic, and we will not actively support creators who have promoted harm to friends, colleagues, and strangers. However, prepaid orders will be accepted for those interested. So, we don't actually want to do this, but we're going to do this if you'll prepay. Now, within prepay too, when you look at that, the interesting thing about that too is the fact that they are asking for something that they wouldn't do with any other comic book too. They're asking you to pay down before you get to receive it. Now, when you do that, when you basically go out and either say you won't pick up things like a lot of the other places that were saying this, there were 3 main ones, in fact. 2 of the other main ones said that they wouldn't fulfill orders, period. So that actually shows a level of discrimination within it that's illegal. But even going to this, I could argue that that's probably illegal as well if you make people jump through these different types of hoops. But continuing here, Meyer responded by tweeting the names and addresses of the stores that decided not to stock Jawbreakers. According to Bleeding Cool's in-depth, you notice everything's in-depth within all that. You like that? Everyone that they basically collude and conspire with, it's all in-depth reporting of the weekend events. The retailer then received negative reviews and online comments. This includes stores that ordered individual copies requested by consumers, a completely normal sale practice for lesser known titles. Yeah, that's not exactly how that works too, but let's misrepresent the way that works. Also, let's misrepresent the fact that we have Richard Johnston on a title or on something, period, here, and that's actually in-depth reporting. And let's also misrepresent everything else there too. Oh, we're going to summon Gail Simone in. Isn't this going to be fun? At this point, the controversy was public enough that well-known industry figures were getting involved. DC writer Gail Simone tangled with Jawbreakers fans on Twitter, and Marvel writer Mark Waid called Antarctic Press on Friday to find out if they knew Meyer's history. Waid and Meyer have clashed in the past. In a post screen cap by Bleeding Cool, Waid wrote, so you've seen this before. You can go through that. You can actually freeze it here. I don't want to actually cover that and make this like a 10-day long video. And then in early hours of Saturday morning, Antarctic Press announced on its Facebook it would no longer publish Jawbreakers. So you can see this series of events, and they're leaving out a lot of stuff in this too. They're leaving out the fact that these people plot behind the scenes, that they have certain people that say, we're not going to do this, we're going to bully and harangue anyone that does. So someone says, hey, these people, they work for these shops out here, these shops aren't going to do that. Oh no, that's harassment. So these people, they want to be able to go out, they want to eat their identitarian cake, and they also want to have their virtue signal behind the scenes. They want to have that masked identity too. And yet they're also doing it under their own names. Isn't it interesting when we talk about being anonymous out there? They say you got to interact on your own names. You got to throw out your own merit. You got to do all of this stuff. But no, when they talk about it, literally they're literally talking about attacking other people and attacking other businesses. That's a bridge too far. Then we get to Myers then accused Wade of using his power in the industry to get Jawbreakers canceled, which that's definitely what he was doing. He also shared an unverified Reddit 4chan post claiming to be from a Marvel employee, saying that the Marvel editor-in-chief, C.B. Cebulski, received very angry emails from Antarctica Press. The anonymous post claimed that Antarctic threatened legal action against Marvel because Wade supposedly used the Marvel brand while threatening physical violence against Antarctic Press. There's no evidence that any of the accusations are accurate or that Marvel got involved in any capacity. In a later tweet, Antarctic Press denied contact from either Marvel or Cebulski. Yeah, when you get down to that too, isn't it very, very interesting when you look at this stuff? You basically have a guy come in, he utilizes mafia tactics, nice business you got over there. It'd be a shame if someone else burned it down. Let me help you out with that so you don't have to deal with it. Those kind of strong-arming tactics, going in and telling people what kind of course to take to deal with blowback, loaded words. Go and check out the video that I did on Bleeding Cool, where you go in and look at that article. That thing is very telling. Continuing, Jawbreakers isn't really canceled. The book will still go out to its 6,800 odd Indiegogo backers, but its creator already announced they're launching a new publisher called Splato Comics. Colorist Brett Smith said it would be an imprint of Simon & Schuster, but then deleted the tweet. As of Monday, Splato mostly consists of a name and a logo. Isn't that how things go? Isn't that exactly how things work? Then, of course, we've got to link it to Gamergate because it's all got to be the same blur. Following the Gamergate playbook, while this whole controversy is ostensibly an Indiegogo comic, it's actually part of a familiar campaign strategy. From Gamergate YouTubers to far-right internet celebrities spotlighted during the 2016 U.S. election, agitators have employed a similar playbook to stir up controversy and raise their own name recognition, typically targeting conservative communities of predominantly white men who feel their world is being overtaken by progressive values and identity politics. Amazing what asking for a nice comic book is. Amazing for asking for people not to call you a Nazi. How that's spun, isn't it? Very, very telling. Continuing, they stir up flame wars and share bigoted comments online, especially targeting women and minorities. When called out, they claim it's either a two-sided debate or just edgy humor. When mainstream media outlets and public figures start to criticize the behavior, the agitators position themselves as the underdog heroes who are fighting censorship, and inevitably they have something to sell. Yep, it's always inevitable. If I want to throw out something like my own horror title, I'm trying to pimp it onto you. That's exactly what they're going to say there. It's sad. They tell you to go make your own comic book if you want to go do it. That's what they told Meyer to do. Meyer goes and makes it, and it doesn't have the right to exist. Isn't that something? They tell you to go and do it, but of course that can't be. Not only that, who's the underdog here? Are we talking about a guy that's just some dude off of YouTube that has been talking, other people like myself, just some guy that's been buying comic books, that's out there like other people? We're just normal people. We've decided that we were fed up with this stuff. We started talking about it, and we have people that are backed by the monolith, Disney, backed by Warner, and so on. Those people are out there actively going against the very contracts that should keep them from doing so. But these people, they want to paint themselves as the underdog because they label something, like marginalized. They want to say that they're the little guy out there. Amazing how the comic book consumer with a voice is the most dangerous weapon of all, isn't it? But continuing, Meyer has built a public profile for himself, attracting attention with offensive stunts. Getting dropped by Antarctic Press may wind up up to being a net gain for Jawbreakers. Most of his target audience won't be familiar with Antarctic Press, but they certainly know Mark Waid. Actually, people are becoming more and more aware of Antarctic, and I would say that a lot of people do know Antarctic Press because of the pro or anti-Trump satire that we've been seeing. When we see this satirical approach, many of us back the idea that satire can exist, that things are allowed to exist, but we don't know. I wonder on the other side of that, how many of those people knew what Antarctic was? I mean, when you get down to that, how many of these people railing against that proverbial machine, how many of them were actually backing comics in any way, shape, or form? I would say this person probably isn't, when you get down to it. But continuing, after this, the obvious next step is to launch a new indie publisher or comic site, either crowdfunded or backed by a sympathetic investor. We've already talked about that too. Look at the person responsible for this. Look at the way that they've talked about them stuff. Oh, look, they're from Tumblr Hello. I mean, look at some of the things that they've actually been responsible for. Tumblr Hello. Oh, and of course, they're a film and TV critic for BBC Radio, of course. Continuing and finish this garbage off. So far, it's unclear how well this strategy works long term. In the aftermath of Gamergate, we saw projects like The Sarkeesian Effect, a documentary that raised thousands of dollars on Patreon before imploding spectacularly. Yeah, that I actually have read about somewhat, and that was more creator ego and really lies and other things blowing up more than anything. Similarly, Milo Yiannopoulos gained international notoriety before losing a lucrative book deal and falling from grace. How exactly did that come together too? I mean, what exactly hurt Milo when you look at that? Was it because this stuff's set up like that? And it's interesting too how they're trying to connect this. They try to connect Richard Spencer and on. Continuing, he now sells advertises supplement pills on InfoWars. That's huge money, by the way. These people love to scoff at that. People like Alex Jones, they make bank doing that kind of stuff. It's insane when you look at the money. Continuing, alt-right, Richard Spencer's alt-right website keeps getting taken down, and he postponed his college lecture tour due to a lack of interest. Richard Spencer being tied to this stuff, that's amazing to me. Basically, I'm now getting linked in with the alt-right. What we're talking about is comic consumers all across the spectrum here that really involve one thing. They involve wanting comic books, and they don't want people taking to the pulpit and turning these things into lectures. They don't want hollow characters thrown out there. For example, let's look at an Iceman. Iceman went from being Iceman to being homosexual Iceman. And the homosexual was a stereotype that if you and I would have written it, we would have been laughed out, or worse, we would have been called homophobes. But when this person actually wrote it, because they identify a specific way, it got canceled because it was terrible. But we had places like GLAAD actually giving it awards because being able to say that you're one thing without it actually being palatable, that apparently matters. I mean, it can't sell, but you know what? That's what you need out there. And if you don't like that, well, you're just like Richard Spencer. Continuing. So while it's possible to gain money and followers by agitating hate campaigns online, it's not necessarily a sustainable model, especially if you receive effective pushback from the community you're targeting. The future of Comicsgate depends on whether comics industry leaders decide to look the other way, as some game developers did during Gamergate, or if they actually take a public stand against harassment. Yeah, that's what they need to do. They need to go out and they need to actively go and target the people who buy their books. That wouldn't make our point even louder, would it? That professionalism is a dead thing, and telling the people that are out there actively making hate statements, the professionals that want to say things like hitting cis people in the teeth with baseball bats, those people, they don't need to be censured. No, it's the consumers, because the consumers are always wrong. That's the thing. The consumer is always right. That means that your money is always right. That's what it boils down to. You can be wrong and have the wrong mentality when you approach, but you know what? Your money is always welcome. And these people, they think exactly the opposite. That's what you get when you hire the woke takers and the socialists out there, because they don't care about your industry. They hope that it leads to something more. Unfortunately, that something more, well, it leads right to here. Anyhow, tell me what you think about this. I'm glad to be done with this article. I really dislike them, but I really think that we need to go through them, because if we leave them alone, if we let them stand, then these things stand as a testament by themselves. And that testament, well, it is very, very misleading. Thank you.